If you are failing at Apex Legends, trust me, you are not alone, and today I'm sharing the ultimate resource to improve your skills with 1 hour of tips and tricks to beat Apex Legends today. If you enjoy, hit that like button, drop a comment down below with any questions that you have, and let's get to it. Today we're going over my top 10 overall tips and tricks for Apex Legends that will make you a better player. I tried to order these as to what I think is the most important for you to understand, but as with basically anything, it's always on you, the player, and the specific situation that you might be in. Let's get right to it. The first will absolutely be surprising to some, but it is going to be your movement in Apex Legends, and more specifically, to keep it simple. Honest to God, you really don't need to know crazy amount of stuff to really perform at the top of the game. Sliding, edge sliding, and stowing your guns, it's all you need in Apex. If you can master these three things, which are what I consider the fundamentals of Apex Legends, you're going to be very successful as a player. It can seem very flashy and very cool to do all this pro movement play like you can see your favorite pro players or streamers doing, but in reality, none of that is necessary. These players can only do this because they already have mastered everything else: insane aim, positioning, and game knowledge. If you don't have this, having all these movement tricks is pretty much pointless. If you're not putting your guns down when you are slightly breaching forward to get into a fight, you're not moving as fast as you possibly can, and when milliseconds matter in Apex Legends, you gotta be doing this as much as possible. At minimum when you're rotating, but really in your gunfights, you should be sliding, stowing your weapons, moving forward, then pulling your weapons out and firing, really all at once. Get the basics mastered, and then you can slowly implement other movement as you do go on with Apex Legends. Number 9 is to not play scared. More times than not, a new player, a less experienced player, or a bad player is going to be a little nervous when it does come to taking fights, probably due to their confidence. But if you are playing scared, you're going to be playing in a much different way that really stunts your growth as a player. I want to specifically mention that you need to always be returning fire and applying pressure at enemies. Not doing this is going to allow good players to simply just walk all over you. If I am shooting at a player from a considerable distance away or even closer to them and they are not firing back at me, this pretty much instantly tells me their skill level, and I can more accurately play that engagement to my advantage. It is very easy for anyone that has put in a serious amount of hours in Apex Legends, which is a lot of people at this point since we are 4 years into the game, to really just understand how their enemy is going to perform in the battle that they are about to take. The biggest thing I can recommend to calm your nerves is just to tell yourself you can queue up for another match, so don't sit in the corner while everyone else around you is becoming great. Number 8 is something that should be an extension of your weaponry in Apex Legends. You need to think of it almost as a third gun that you have. And this is going to be your grenade usage. Out of the three, thermites, frag grenades, and arc stars, I do think frag grenades are the most versatile of them all. They do the most raw damage as long as someone's not standing in a thermite. And overall, they can have the most explosive power, literally, to change the way a battle is going. A very close second is going to be arc stars. If you are using arc stars to open a fight with a stick, this can actually be pretty massive if the enemy is not getting away from their teammates. Second to this is that you need to go to the firing range and practice your vert or sky nades. Understanding the various angles and distances to your target and what arc you need to be throwing that grenade at is going to be a huge thing that every player really needs to master. If you don't have positioning, this is a great way to get that high ground positioning. If you know someone is healing or reviving a player behind cover, it also works in this aspect. You should always have a grenade in your bag. It doesn't matter if you have no bag or if you have a gold bag. Grenades are just going to unlock an entire another level of tier or level of success in your game. Moving on, we are going to have none other than armor swapping in Apex Legends. This specific gameplay tactic or technique can probably be number 1 at times as a way to actually make a play happen. Armor swapping your partial empty or your completely empty, say purple armor for a gray armor in a death box, sounds crazy at times, but this is the definitive way to counter third parties and overall extend your ability to simply just survive an engagement. You're going to win a lot more fights if you can understand that every post-fight or even during the middle of a fight, you go into a death box, you rip out that full armor, and you're ready to go to actually outplay your enemy. It needs to be in the back of your mind that every fight you take or every post-fight that you take, you gotta be swapping your armors if anyone is around, and even then, you might want to swap your armor anyway, just in case you do get thirded. Next up is going to be something that is often overlooked and a little forgotten about, and it is going to be the micro game in Apex, and specifically your health management. It's absolutely not talked about enough, but you need to be micromanaging your health by staying healthy literally as often as you can. If you do get hit for, say, 50 shields and you got a little bit of time where no one is actively shooting at you and you're not actively returning fire, you need to be popping a shield cell. You don't necessarily need to heal up to full every single time, but the more frequently you are healing, the more likely you will be able to simply survive. And this kind of goes in tandem with the previous tip of armor swapping. Every heal that you get means that enemy has to simply just do another 25, another 50 damage to you. And if they are not healing up, then you have a massive advantage over them. In this sense, if you're a numbers person, Apex very quickly does become a numbers game. In order to win with the macro of the entire game, you need to be very proficient in the micro. We roll right into the top 5 tips of Apex Legends, and this is to live and die by the third party. If you're not seeing a little connection to everything we have previously talked about, well, you're kind of missing a little bit of the point. Third parties in Apex Legends can create the biggest detriment to your game, but they can also create the biggest opportunity that you can have every single match. If you are wondering just how do you actually capitalize or understand a third party, for starters, if you see people trading in the kill feed and players are getting knocked at the same time the audio of gunfire stops, this is a huge way just to know that those fights are trading players and you can go in there with a 3-on-2-on-1 or a 3-on-2-on-2 and you will have the advantage. If you are simply wondering how to avoid a third party, it all comes down to monitoring your surroundings. Certain legends like Crypto can better help you know if teams are nearby and whether or not the fight you are about to take is a good one. If you aren't or you don't want to play a legend like Crypto, the second best way is of course the audio. Gunshots in Apex travel about 200 to 450 meters away depending on what you are using. Knowing this little amount of intel means you can use this to your advantage to know actually how close enemy players might be if you are about to take a fight. At the end of it all though, you gotta constantly be looking around and be self-aware. What is the ring doing this match? Where was that original dropship path? All these little things will tell you where players probably landed and where they're gonna have to rotate to get to the ring. Next up is going to be proper looting and kind of over looting, but also prioritizing what you need versus what you want to have. You might want that purple armor that is in your view off of the drop, but if you don't have a gun yet, there's really no point to getting that armor because you're just going to die 50 shields slower. Likewise, you may feel as if you need a stock, but in reality, you don't really need that stock to perform in a gunfight. A bigger need would be to have a magazine for the gun, as this actually increases the damage output. Of course, having a stock is going to increase your movement a little bit and increase your reload speed, but you don't necessarily need to have that stock. I've mentioned overlooting so much in Apex Legends that I'm a little tired at this point, but the big thing is to save time for what matters. Find out what you need, get that gun, get that mag, maybe an optic, and push those enemies. Apex Legends is a squad game, a trio of players dropping into the match. There is no solo mode, which does mean your squad composition and specifically the team play aspect of Apex Legends is taking the bronze spot on my top 10 tips list. At minimum, every squad needs to be utilizing the ping system. Preferably, you're all going to have a microphone in and you're going to be talking in a civilized manner to each other. But if not, you can be using the ping system. If you do want a few really strong examples of team play for legend combos, here's a few team legend combos that you really need to try out right now. We are seeing this a lot right now, but we got Catalyst, Seer, and Bangalore. Basically, you are able to put up Catalyst's wall and drop some Bangalore smokes, and then you also drop down Seer's ultimate, so you can simply just track players while they more or less can't see anything. Another combo that is a little under the radar these days is going to be Fuse, Loba, and Rampart. This squad is really all about the ranked grind, in my opinion. You have Rampart to better control areas. You got Fuse to continually dish out damage without really having to utilize grenades completely or your gunfire, since he does have the tactical clusters. And then you do have Loba to really just loot up all the loot in an area without really having to move that much. This is definitely more of a defensive passive squad, but it can absolutely work if you are struggling a little bit with surviving. And if you do want another offensive team squad combination, you should look at Valkyrie for her crazy rotations, Pathfinder or Horizon as that entry fragger and assault legend. And then of course, you can have a little support capability in there with Newcastle, who can also defend the squad and really pick them up at a moment's notice. There is so much that does come down to team play in Apex, and it is why there is no solo mode, whether you agree with it or not. Absolutely make the full use of your teammates and play together like your lives depend on it. Second to first is going to be the gun control and training regimen that you do implement in Apex. Even as someone with over 4,000 hours, I find that when I implement a standard training routine to my daily gameplay, I play substantially better than when I don't warm up or train my aim. 3 to 5 minutes is all you need to make a massive difference. If you can't do a 3-minute training routine before you drop into a game, frankly, I think it's just lazy, and it's going to be on you, the player, not taking every aspect of your game as as seriously as maybe you should. Taking the top spot for what you need to understand the most in Apex Legends is all about just being flexible. The big thing with the previous and right now is that everything that we have talked about is really just being very open to what Apex has to throw at you. If you can be flexible in the weaponry that you are using from game to game, maybe the legend you are using right now in the specific fight might not be the most optimal for that fight, the play strategy that you want to implement, or even just the thought process of how you are approaching the game, you're going to improve at a much faster pace than everyone else that you are playing against. Battle Royales are about action and reaction, and flexibility is going to be key to this. The true goal of every Battle Royale, and specifically Apex Legends, which is a loot-based, RNG-based Battle Royale, is to build consistency. If you can build up all aspects of your game over time, you will be a better player than players that are missing out on a certain aspect of your game. And this remains true from when you are early game dropping to when you are at the end game and maybe you don't have as good of positioning, but you do have that grenade. You can overtake someone because you have a more flexible thought process in how you do approach the game. Today, we're going to go over 5 things that are not necessarily clear and obvious, but are very much so things that you can use in your games right now today to be a better player the next time you drop into your matches. Hit that like button, let's get started. There is nothing more important than your shot in Apex Legends, and learning all those recoils and building up that gun skill, it takes a lot of time. There is really not too many substitutions to put in all those hours, and honestly, this is why on my channel, I pretty much never talk about aiming in Apex Legends, because you gotta put the time in to really get to where you wanna be. But sometimes, just knowing how the game works and functions is gonna be crazy important, so you don't have to necessarily put in all those thousands upon thousands of hours with every weapon just so you can be competitive with other players. Learning the technique of recoil smoothing will not completely make up those hours, but it's a massive start in a massive way for you to improve your skills in an instant. At its core, Apex Legends functions very differently compared to many of the other shooters out there, which does unlock a very specific way for you to better reduce or even completely eliminate the vertical recoil on certain weapons. Whenever you move your crosshair in the left or right direction, it's going to pretty much completely remove the vertical recoil from your weapon. So how do you use this in a fight? Simply put, when you are firing, you can move your character left or right, and then at the same time, move your crosshair in the opposite direction, tracking that enemy to get some shots in there with pretty much no recoil if you do it properly. You can't do this without yourself strafing, but it's going to be very specific in terms of what the enemy is doing in order for it to work, which is really why you need to have some sort of strafe in there for your recoil pretty much to be eliminated. At the end of it all though, horizontal movement of your guns will drastically reduce that vertical recoil, and you should be utilizing this as much as possible. Second to your gun skill is probably the other thing Apex Legends is most known for, and it is going to be your movement. Movement in Apex is of course no joke, and getting out dueled is going to happen. Much like your shot, it takes a lot of hours to master Apex Legends movement. I would argue though, it's even harder to understand when you are doing it well, because you are not really getting that feedback like you do when you are shooting an enemy and connecting your shots. One thing that can make a huge difference though when it does come to controlling your character's moves is going to be the ideology called min-maxing. Min-maxing, also known as peaking sometimes, at its core is basically just the art of how much damage can you dish out maxing while also taking the least amount of damage minning as possible. The most traditional way is to send out shots when an enemy is not looking at you, and then dip into cover when they are about to fire back, or right as they have started firing at you. After this, you would then re-peak and continue to maximize your damage output. The big thing with this though, and oftentimes players are doing wrong, is that you are going to peak at the same side, when in reality, you really want to peak from a different angle or on another side of an object, so the enemy is kept guessing where you are going to shoot them from. This way, they're not going to be lined up pre-aiming your exact spot when you do come around the corner, and you won't be beamed. Learning this is huge. This is the core function for pretty much every fight that is done in and around buildings and on objects, and you'll need to master this min-maxing as soon as possible if you do want to win more fights. As with a lot of things, you can best practice this in-game, but even seeing how fast you can pop out, send some shots out in the firing range can be a good way to get some muscle memory built, and it is the first step that you can take. The most definitive common question that I do get asked from day to day is going to be, what legend should you main or play? This is something everyone is going to have to address eventually, but in reality, it really does not matter all that much, especially if you are struggling with the core mechanics of your guns and your movement. Every legend can be good with the right player and the right play style, and as someone who makes a tier list every season, it's always weird
weird because deep down, I really truly do know that each legend can be a very good contender in Apex Legends if you are playing the proper way. But still, some legends will of course be simply better teammates, better at fragging out, and are going to have a higher skill potential and overall just be a more meta legend. If you do want some legends who are basically no skill but highly rewardable legends, you're going to want to check out Bloodhound for great team play and support, Octane for a good and simple legend who lets you focus on your guns, which is very important if you are starting out, and Loba so you can bypass some looting and get a lot more fighting in there, which is definitely huge. Newer players are generally spending more time looting, when really, you should be spending a lot more time fighting. Just know that whoever you are going to pick to play, you can make it work, and if you do need more on every single legend or any specific legend, check out the playlist in the description down below or the pinned comment. Our next one is not really what you're going to think it is. Apex Legends is of course a team game, and you can unlock another tier of play if you are a good team player, but in order to really get to this high level of team play, you need to be able to handle yourself mechanically and even intellectually in Apex Legends. Playing solo on your own with no teammates to back you up is actually one of the best ways to improve your skills. It forces you to play smarter, aim better, and overall, you're gonna have to play with a little bit more urgency. Here are 3 quick tips for you to win more 1-on-2s or 1-on-3s. For one, when you open a fight, try to get someone down with your first spray or your first assault of that enemy team. This makes things a ton more manageable, and I cannot stress enough that you gotta start off on the right foot. 2, do not rush it. Take your time, draw enemies out of their cover, separate them using buildings and terrain, and take the one-on-ones when they do come by. You won't have a lot of opportunities for this, and when they do come, you gotta take advantage of it. And 3, while it's not specific to solo play per se, you gotta constantly be healing up. You will not have a ton of downtime, and staying as healthy as possible all the time is vital so you are making the most of your time. Another great benefit of playing solo is simply that you're not gonna be able to pass blame on your squad, which I think every player needs to be doing just a little bit more. You need to be taking more ownership and responsibility of your gameplay, and a little less blame passing, I think, is what everyone should be doing. How do you actually pull everything together? How do you improve your skills from day to day? And how do you just not play on autopilot? Playing in a battle royale, and specifically a loot battle royale like Apex Legends, consistency is absolutely going to be key. You're not going to get the best loot every time, the best drop. You're not going to be in the best positioning. So if you can, you want to be training and improving with the guns that you are unfamiliar with, and I cannot undersell how important this is. More on this in a second, but here's 3 things that you can do to improve fast. For one, watch better players play and learn from them. Pro players or any experienced player, you can learn a ton just from watching them for like 30 minutes to an hour. Second to this, there's no substitution for time in. You got to put the time in if you want to be a better player. And third is the big one, firing range routines. Develop a firing range routine, stick with it, do it every day. It only takes 5 minutes in the range to really improve your skills dramatically, as you are going to be spraying and using various guns in the range in a no stress environment. You can shoot hundreds and thousands of rounds in the range in 5 minutes, and this could take you days or even a week to do this in actual game time. If you want to copy my training routine, which I think works pretty well, you can do the following. I do 5 different things, 1 minute per thing. First, I start off by just tap firing the close signs. I generally want to use an SMG or a harder to control gun. Using a 301 that's fully kitted with a barrel stabilizer, this isn't going to really do too much for you. Something that I usually like to use is a Volt or maybe even a car SMG. I like to tap fire those close signs. For the second minute, I'm going to tap fire the close signs, but now I'm also going to mix in one magging the bots. Basically, by doing this, I'm snapping around, seeing how accurate I can be, and then I'm actually releasing my entire magazine. The third minute is I'm going to be tap firing the further signs. This is going to be a little bit hard to do at first, but generally, you are just trying to be kind of accurate. You don't need to be super precise with this. It's really all just a warm-up. The fourth minute is all about training your super close range fights. So I'm going to be hip fire spraying the bots and then swapping to a shotgun to see if I can get some solid hits in. And then the final minute, I'm going to free reign everything. I'm going to tap the far signs, the close signs, one mag the bots, swap to the shotgun, and do that for the following minute. Do this 5-minute routine before every play session. It doesn't take a lot of time, and your skill level, I promise you, is going to skyrocket. And I mean, you're going to drastically improve. I cannot sell this enough. I highly recommend that you practice with a different gun each time as well, so you can learn every weapon in Apex Legends, because again, loot is not going to be guaranteed on the ground.
Hey everyone, today we're going to go over 20 tips to help you simply just be better at Apex Legends. We've got tips on how to actually improve your rank gains, game sense settings, fast armor upgrades, and a lot more. Some new and some older ones that you probably don't even know about, so let's get to it. First up, we have the fastest way you can level up your Evo armor. This involves a split strategy with your teammates, but if you can, land directly on a Trident, and as a support or assault character, you are going to want to drive around to multiple Evo harvesters, assault or support extended supply bins, and you are going to get your Evo leveled up insanely fast. I generally am going to recommend that you do this for about the first 45, maybe 60 seconds in a match, and do not drive too far from your squad. 1 or 2 stations and a few supply bins will get you off to a real quick start. As always, monitor your drop and be aware of who is around you. Don't just abandon your teammates if you are being contested. If you want to take this one step further, here's the literal best team comp you can run for actually the most efficient path of getting upgrades. First legend you want is Ballistic. He gets assault bins for being in the assault class, which is 100 Evo points, and then he does get the first upgrade of letting him see care packages, aka the Skirmisher class, which is another 50 Evo per CP scan. The second legend is Vantage. Vantage gets you survey beacons from being in the recon class, and the first upgrade can give you ring consoles, filling the role of the controller legend. And lastly, you're going to want any support legend. Personally, I would roll with Conduit or Loba, as I find them to be the best for most of Apex's modes. Loba might also help speed looting up if you are slowing down a little bit in your rotations as you're trying to get all those survey beacons and ring consoles. A quick tip that is not clearly written is that if you interact with Evo harvesters, get knocks, and more, there's 2 different icons. A triple or group icon means this upgrade is going to the entire squad, and a single icon means just you are getting that Evo applied. Apex has now been out for more than 5 years and 20 seasons. If you are feeling overwhelmed, lost, and kind of like you can't do anything but end up back in the lobby, here's what you need to do to actually improve your game skills. It's all about progression and getting the feeling of Apex down and what really matters. This is going to be gun skill and how you practice. First is to start with the firing range. Just a few minutes a day here can make a massive difference to get weapon feel and recoil control down. Second is to immediately start playing the mixtape playlist. Daily if possible. Honestly, more the better. You can't do too much here. This is going to net you dozens upon dozens, maybe even hundreds more gunfights every hour, which means combat improvement. If you aren't playing for as long or you don't have a lot of time, say less than 2 hours, then I would just do a quick 1 or 2 minutes in the range and then start playing the battle royale, so you are getting the most out of your time with the modes that you want to play, like pubs or ranked. Speaking of ranked, here's how to get the optimal gains in the new system. First off, the root goal really has not changed. Placement is going to be king, but you will need some KP when you get to diamond, if you want to get to masters, of course. Platinum you can mostly get through with just placement alone. For rookie through gold, I would prioritize just winning the game, but honestly, taking an early to mid game fight should be the way to go. It should be how you are going to want to think about it. Not necessarily 50-50ing off the drop, but just get an early fight, I would say, when there is more than 10 teams left. This is because when you get to platinum, you're going to really want to prioritize the first half of the game with getting 1 fight and 1 squad wipe. If you get 1 squad wipe, that's 3 KP, and more or less you can chill out till the end of the game and just try to keep enemies away. This is going to limit your ability to get third-partied, increase your placement chances across the board. Once you get to diamond, you're still going to want to get an early fight to get 3 KP, but I would also start to be a little bit riskier with taking 1 mid to latest game fight to get another 3. 6 KP is ideally the goal that you want to get really at any ranked, so if you can't get an early fight and then also win the game, you're going to get a nice 6 KP or so from 2 squad wipes, and this is going to get you to masters. When it comes to legend upgrades, there's a big thing to keep in mind for a handful of legends. That is that any legend upgrade that nets you 2 charges needs to seriously be looked at as the upgrade you take, not because having 2 of something is good, but because as soon as you unlock the ability to get 2 charges, you will have that ability way more than if it is just 1. This is because the second or your next charge can start building up immediately after you do get that first one. This is going to lessen the downtime between charges and increase your play possibilities. Some games your teammates just won't perform as good, or yourself won't be able to get that red Evo as fast. While armor swapping has been nerfed, you can actually still implement this crazy OP strategy to get your team big swaps from the ground. Whoever on the team has the highest level armor, have them pull weaker armors from death boxes and heal them up to max shields. You can then drop these on the ground, and for now, they stay at that max color rarity. Obviously, as soon as someone picks it up that has not achieved that level, you will only get an overshield, but this big overshield can mean the difference between getting knocked and living a little bit longer if you are getting pushed or third party. On World's Edge and Olympus, vaults are kind of cracked. They've always been great for loot, but now honestly, they're a little bit too good to not recommend opening. This is because not only does it just give 200 Evo for opening the vault, you also have a chance to get a full armor upgrade via Evo caches that
can spawn in them. Plus, all that purple and gold loot is still good to get. I'll also add that the ones specifically on World's Edge take very little time and effort to open, as many cargo bots are already flying pretty close by. Crafters post-update do not have as many choices, but to be honest, do not waste or walk by them, as in some ways, they are better now than they were in previous seasons. Before, I was always a little weary on recommending teams to craft, as it slows your gameplay down, and even upon their release way back in Season 6, I said this like 1 week after they did come out, I found them slow and unimaginable, but now it does take just a quick second to get a free bat or medkit, not to mention the ammo that you can get is actually OP. And speaking of crafting ammo, a great strategy that you can do is when you are landing in a POI with a crafter is to grab a couple guns and then immediately craft ammo, especially if you are contested with multiple teams nearby. 120 rounds for 2 spray weapons or 2 stacks of ammo right away makes it way safer to take teams without running out, especially if you cannot loot as much as you may need to due to the POI getting split up by 2 contesting teams. An old Apex Legends tip, but still ever so viable one that many may not know about, revolves around the fortified class of legends. Yes, fortified lets thick boys take less damage, but the big thing is that this does not apply to the heads of any fortified legend. So if you see a Newcastle, Gibraltar, Caustic, take a second longer and just aim and prioritize for getting a headshot to get maximum damage. Apex Legends cosmetics in some ways have really gotten out of control, but one nice thing is that the store saw a complete overhaul recently. If you are unaware, scroll down in the store and there's now a recolor only section. This here is more or less free stuff you can get from those red tokens, the legend tokens. If you already have the base version of that skin, you gotta take advantage of all that freebies that we can get. Sometimes you need to understand the larger picture of Apex's meta to get a good grasp beyond simple tips and tricks. Apex has seen an uptick in being more aggressive due to the ranked changes and weapon changes. Larger mag weapons will begin to see more utilization and usefulness. Prowler, Volt, Flatline are all great options to better put down teams of enemies, whereas the R9 struggles massively even to get one knock without having to reload. A good tip to know is that anytime you do need to reload, you basically make it so your time to kill becomes the worst out of any gun in the game when comparing it to something that doesn't need a reload. If you don't have the best aim, pick the larger mag weapon for better consistency and increased success in your gunfights. 2 quick tips for Mirage. If you haven't played the Bamboozle King in a while, Mirage can now get a 30-second ultimate, which is insane. Absolutely take this upgrade every time, as this does mean he only has 15 seconds of downtime where he won't have this ultimate ready to use or already be active. Another tip that revolves around his decoys. Most know the old fake looting tip where you put a decoy on the death box to bait enemies, but also dropping a decoy at a crafter or crouched on a door can be a real great way to confuse enemies into shooting you, especially the crouched on door one. I find this will even let you do a quick counterplay, whereas the enemy has no idea that it's a decoy on that doorway, and you can run around and shoot them in the back or the side. I say it a lot, but truthfully, the best way to not have a poor time in Apex Legends and to perform better is to never play with random players. Building consistency and learning your teammates' play styles can go so far, so be sure to join my community Discord to never have random struggles, and you can ask me any Apex questions that you might have as well. A seemingly small but massive mistake involves your initial looting path or grabbing. You really don't ever want to pick up everything off the ground when you are first looting. Grabbing gray attachments for weapons that you are not going to use or excess non-relevant ammo is a super big throw on your part. This is amplified if enemies did land with you. Not being able to pick up that one item you really need because your inventory is clogged with junk and wasted stuff can take valuable seconds or a fraction thereof to drop those items. Also, if you wipe a squad and you need to loot a death box super fast, but you have so much wasted crap in your inventory, this again just slows things down when you are getting third-partied. It's a small thing, but you'll notice how good players and pros really never waste time picking up items that they know that they will never need or want to use. Also, every decision and second that you do take doing something in Apex could have longer lasting ramifications, like not getting to height right before an enemy team, missing out on an endgame positioning, and so on. It's going to be all these little small things that add up, and it's going to affect you in the long run. There's so many great legends in Apex, and most are viable, but I do want to mention 3 legends that you do need to use that are not on top of the pick rate in Apex. The first is going to be Valkyrie. Her upgrades really return her passive jetpack to form and make her a real combat threat. Not to mention her rotation capabilities from her ultimate are still honestly great if you are playing ranked. Second is Loba. Loba is my definitive best beginner legend that works in both pubs and ranked Apex. For pubs, you're going to get looted up faster, meaning more fights and better improvement because of it. And as for ranked, you'll have more safety when it comes to looting at endgame, and you won't have to make a bad decision just because you ran out of ammo or healing items. Lastly, we got Fuse. He's incredible at just farming damage and overall Overall, I find the ability to learn grenade usage to be so much better since you can hold 2 in a stack, and he has a lot more play options with that grenade arm. Also, and not to mention, you'll be able to apply pressure all game long, which can be very valuable in ranked as well. In the old days of Apex Legends armor, you always had a decision to be made when it came to armor swapping a purple for like a lesser blue or even a gray. Generally, you didn't really want to do this as you were going to lose your armor. This mostly was evident when you had to armor swap mid-fight, as every little shield did matter though. Today, that's not the case. You should always be armor swapping or grabbing that core that is in the death box. Even getting a little 50 gray evo boost is a pure addition to your health now. You're going to be healthier to take another fight, but more importantly, this can save on batteries by just popping a few cells if you do need to top off your armor still. If you are a controller or an M&K player and you're struggling with your aim, I mean, let's be real, aim assist does everything for controller players, so if you are an M&K player, to be honest, your sensitivity might be too high. The easiest way to make things feel better when it comes to your shot is to lower your sensitivity. For controller players, I would literally just start with 3-3 or 4-4 classic. Linear at these senses also works if you are more familiar with the linear aim style, but do not make it more complex than it needs to be. You don't really need high sense if your game sense is anyway decent, as you can tell where enemies are, and you shouldn't really need to be snapping around doing 180s to target your enemies. If you find that you're doing this a lot, snapping around, it's probably because your game sense isn't that great and you need to just look out a little bit more and be a little bit more aware. Since there's no armor off the drop, if you land and get decent to better guns, you 1000% need to push an enemy as soon as possible. Because of the armor changes, they are not going to have any sort of edge anymore from that lovely RNG via them getting a blue, purple, or gold armor, and you absolutely need to think of this as a mathematical and statistical advantage in your favor. But the bigger thing to remember is to not play scared and get used to being in uncomfortable situations like pushing off spawn. It's going to be the real only true way to improve. Also remember that it's okay to be bad. Like, not everyone is great at everything all the time, but the key is time. You can get better. Anyone can with the right determination, work ethic, and time in.
Today we are going to go over how to better use and implement all 3 of Apex Legends grenades into your gameplay. Grenades are one of the biggest elements that can simply just change the flow of your battles. This remains true for those struggling in Bronze and Silver, all the way up to those in Masters and Predator. If you've watched a few of my videos in the past, you know I live and die on the hill of how important grenades are. It may seem like they take up too much space in your inventory where an extra healing item or ammo would be better, but generally, you need to always have at least one. Grenades are the definitive way to force players to move and or get big damage to better press and engagement. The big one though is going to be forcing movement. Positioning is so important in Apex, and more times than not, you're not going to always be in that perfect spot, and you'll need an avenue to take someone out. A grenade is how you do this. Without it, it makes things a lot more difficult and much more dependent on the legend or character you are playing, or just having aimbot. Even if you do have that great legend to force that enemy's movement, the damage potential is oftentimes much lower than a simple grenade. Otherwise, when you should be using a grenade really comes down to the enemy's position. If they are in a smaller room or alley, this will produce much better results because they do have less area to move and they will need to take the damage or get flushed out of that spot. It is in my opinion that the best raw damage grenade that is probably also the most slept on is going to be frag grenades. Frags also can be the most flexible grenade to use for many different types of fights. Frag grenades will deal anywhere from 1 to 100 damage for a full contact hit and has a maximum blast radius of about 9 meters. One of the biggest things going for frag grenades is that if an enemy takes any health damage, they will get pushed and displaced from their location. This can be a straight 50 flesh damage, or it could even be 99 shield damage and then 1 health damage. The amount of distance is based on the proximity to that damage or the explosion, so in general, getting hit for a full 100 is going to send someone a lot farther than getting tickled for a sub 10 hit. One of the more flashy moves many will want to learn is vert or sky nading. Since frag grenade's explosion timer starts as soon as you throw it, you do have the ability to throw that grenade straight up in the air and have it explode right in an enemy's face if you do have good timing and placement. This will depend on your distance to the enemy, but oftentimes if someone is directly above you, throwing that grenade vertically can cause massive damage if they do not see the grenade getting thrown, and it can even cause them to get pushed off of that high ground if they do take some health damage. The big way to practice this and the easy way is that you can do this in the firing range, practice the various distances, and get those trajectories down. Maybe not as useful, but you can also throw a grenade straight vertically if you are getting chased by an enemy. If timed properly, the chasing enemy could walk straight into the explosion, and this will help you get some relief to reset. The rolling technique is also incredible for almost the opposite reason of vert nades. If an enemy is hiding behind cover or slightly under your position,
throwing a grenade on the ground and then having that grenade explode just as it rolls off of the edge of that high ground is a really nice way to get some big hits in. The benefit to this method is that enemies oftentimes will have no idea that that grenade is about to roll onto them until that last moment when the icon does show up. This is because the grenade indicator will not appear if the grenade is not in the line of sight or in the view of that enemy till it is already too late. In general, you can also do this method if an enemy is chasing you to try and prevent them from pushing into your area. If you are really pressed for time, throwing a grenade and then popping a battery or healing at them may give you just enough relief to get some extra health off and turn the tide of your battle. A slightly more tricky type of grenade play can be to intentionally throw a grenade off of a wall or a bank shot. Banking a grenade off a wall can better let you accurately place a grenade at someone's feet or behind an object that you cannot clearly see. This is also slightly less linear for an enemy to deal with, so it could be a little bit harder for someone to comprehend as well. A very underrated and semi-difficult frag technique is to roll frag grenades under doorways. It does not work on every door, but if a door has a small gap on the bottom corners, you can actually throw the frag grenade into a room and have the door blow up from the other side. This can be extremely devastating for enemies to deal with. It does let you push in right as that door does explode. Before we move on to thermite grenades, here are my general recommendations for how many grenades you should be carrying per backpack. Just know though that this is highly dependent on your playstyle, passive versus aggressive, and your legend that you are playing, as well as your backpack size. With no bag, it is definitely difficult, but still I think carrying one is a must. This follows true for the gray bag. If you are running something like a wingman or lesser ammo hungry gun, using 2 for a blue bag works, and then 3 for a purple or gold. If you are running 2 spray weapons, I think 2 for the purple or gold bag, and then 1 for the blue is fine. Regardless of the bag, always carry and look out for 1 grenade after you do use it. A secret tip that many may not be aware of is that you can actually tell how many kinds of grenades you are holding by looking at the icon on the bottom of your screen. If there is 1 line on the outside of that grenade icon, you have an additional type of grenade. 2 lines on either side means you do have a grenade of each kind. This is going to be small and it's not always going to be useful, but it can give you a quick indication if you have another type of grenade in your inventory. Unfortunately, you cannot tell how many or what kind of grenade you are carrying. Probably one of the more forgotten grenades, or at least the most slept on, is going to be thermites. The general function of thermites is that they are a fire grenade that does 4 damage per tick if an enemy steps on that grenade for any sort of time. The minimum damage that the grenade is going to do is 24 damage, and then it's going to rapidly stack up if enemies are not getting out of that fire fast enough. Oftentimes, players are not going to respect how fast that damage actually does stack up, and it's pretty easy to miss the fact that you are standing in a thermite. Because of this, I do think that they can be pretty insane if you do have the ability to get really good placement on them. Since thermites do explode in the horizontal direction, this is vital to how you can use the grenade to your advantage. The most basic use of a thermite is to throw on the ground, trying to stop advancement of the enemies or anyone moving into your area. While I do think the burn damage of the grenade is not the greatest at times, I also think enemies are greatly threatened by a thermite, even to the point where that the enemy will over prioritize how bad a thermite can hurt you, when in reality, 24 damage is pretty small to push through. One of my favorite uses of thermites is to have the added benefit of tracking enemies that are actively getting burned by it. Since the damage ticks for 4 even after they do leave the grenade, this does give you some small sense of recon on that player, letting you more or less see them through walls or behind cover. It will also give you some intel as to their shield or health status. Since thermites do last on the ground for a few seconds, the audio is actually something worth noting. You can use the audio of a thermite to help mask your movement. This could be either pushing into an area or escaping out of an area, depending on your goal. Using one of these thermite grenades to help mask the audio of a revive or even a healing item is also a strategy that you should be aware of, as not only does the grenade stop enemies from pushing in, it's going to help conceal the audio of what you are doing. If there's only one way you have to use the thermite grenade though, it is to better force movement, similar to a frag grenade. The benefit of a thermite though is that you can better place it, since all you gotta do is throw that grenade next to an object rather than behind it like a frag grenade, which is a little bit more difficult. My last word of warning is that you can pretty easily jump over a thermite grenade. Any sort of small variation in height of the terrain will make this possible, so just be ready for it. Moving on to what was once the definitive best grenade in Apex Legends, but nowadays it's a little bit more tame compared to what it was. If you have been away from Apex for a little bit, arc stars do a straight 75 damage to enemies when they are in proximity of that explosion. This is for both shields and health damage now. If you stick an enemy, it's going to do an additional 10 damage upon stick, but now there is no slowdown effect when you are actually getting stuck. The slowdown does happen though when a grenade does explode, and this is where the power of arc stars really lie. Not only can you force movement with an arc star, you can also prevent movement when it explodes making it much easier to get shots on there, and of course, catch enemies off guard if they are in the open. Additionally, they are going to get a slight screen disorientation upon detonation of that arc as well. Much like the previous, you can still use arc stars just like the other grenades by throwing them vertically to vertinate someone. A tactic that is always great is to use an arc star to explode doors before you breach in. Throwing an arc on the door seems like the logical way to go, but actually, the grenade really should go on the base of the door, on the floor. If a door breaks while that grenade is attached to it, the grenade is going to simply just disappear into oblivion. This means if an ability or if an enemy kicks that door down, the grenade is just gone. Be very aware of this, as not too many realize this is something that you can utilize to your advantage, and oftentimes you can't just kick a door if it has one kick left and the grenade is going to go away. It is not as crazy as it once was, but a priority when you are using arcs should be to try and open a fight with the stick. Not only does this send the entire squad scrambling, it's a great way to stun the enemy and get a quick knock on them to even the odds. In addition to the benefit of being stunned, arc stars kind of have the added benefit of being the ultimate precision grenade. They are not going to bounce or roll when you are placing them, which will let players be very accurate, and it does give them a little bit more capability to finesse players. It sounds silly, but doubling up on arc stars when assaulting a squad can be pretty solid. The first arc star is going to stun and damage them, and then you basically get a second free hit since they are already immobile. You can also specifically place arc stars on the opposite sides of objects, so enemies have nowhere to go and basically are going to take some damage no matter what. This could also even work with frag grenades.
Today, we're taking a look at 7 movement techniques that pros are constantly utilizing and that you should be using too. Some of these are really basic movement techniques that don't take much to get down, but you may not even realize how much they can matter in your games. First, in order to really excel at your movement, you are going to want to change a few settings in my opinion. If you are not using paddles on your controller, which I personally do, and I do recommend that you use it, but if you can't get a controller with paddles or you can't get a mod to have paddles on your controller, you can do a couple things. First is that I would definitely recommend you use bumper, jumper, and then also bind the right stick as crouch. This way you can be constantly aiming while you are moving around, stowing your weapons. This is nearly, if not the most important and obvious tip to do in Apex. While you may roll your eyes, I can't believe the amount of times I spectate my random teammates who are running around with their weapons out. I spectated a random duo the other day and they probably didn't stow their weapons maybe more than once or twice in the entire match. So this needs to be said. You should be putting your guns down as much as possible without costing yourself in fights. This means putting them away to even chase enemies around a corner. If you watch any high-level pro player, I'm not going to name any names, but if you're watching those high movement god players, they are stowing their weapons just to go into fights a little bit quicker to really catch their enemies off guard, and you should be doing this too. If you can't stow your weapons, do a slide jump and then pull them out. You'll be making the most out of the most basic movement speed, and you'll be excelling in your games. You should always be putting your weapons away if you do not need them. You'll probably get caught off guard a few times while doing this, and that is okay. It's okay to fail while trying to learn how to kind of increase your movement. The second movement technique, which I am kind of grouping up together with the first one because these first two are so basic, I really didn't think they deserved their own kind of categories in this video. And this is going to be edge sliding. Edge sliding gives you a small movement boost in speed, which can be great for opening fights or chaining these together for even more momentum. This is simply done just by sliding off of the edge of objects. You can absolutely decimate enemies if you are doing this properly. You know, if you're coming from height and someone is down low and you're sliding off the edge of an object, this will make it pretty great as you are going to be flying at them at speeds they probably just can't handle. The next and the last movement technique for this video that I would say is a basic movement technique is going to be heel peeking. Mega simple, mega important though for continual game sense and knowledge. Pros are doing this all the time and you absolutely should be doing this too. When you are hiding behind cover and you are healing up with like a Phoenix kit, a battery, you can do with syringes, really anything. They're going to be bobbing up and down, left and right, looking out of their cover to see what the enemies are doing. By doing this, you're really just gaining a lot more game knowledge and game sense as to what the enemy players are doing. So you can be way more well aware of what you are going to have to do after you are done healing. Are they pushing? Are they fighting someone else? Are they healing? All this knowledge is very critical in determining the best way to fight enemies. You can do this again by just simply bobbing in and out of cover, maybe crouching, or my preferred method really is going to be jumping up and down and peeking over objects because it does reveal much less of your body. Before we get into some of the more advanced techniques, if you have any questions or you just want to chat, we do stream live on Twitch nearly daily, so stop on over there and we can discuss really anything Apex or gaming related, and I appreciate your support.
Moving on from this, we do have side peeking. This is very simple to do, but it's much harder to execute perfectly because you are going to need very precise timing on your movement. So basically, you're just going to be popping out of cover, doing some shots on enemy till you are gaining their attention, and when they are about to return fire, you're going to hide behind cover, and they'll probably stop firing because you hid, so then you're going to pop back out and do a little bit more damage. Let's now move on to one of my favorite techniques in the game, and this is going to be wall jumping. It's incredible at gaining momentum and movement speed. It's even better for overall transportation games and getting out of areas without having to do any sort of climbing. But if you are able to do wall jumping with effectiveness, you can best use it while opening a fight, and you can really get the drop on enemies. Not only are you going to be quiet because you're flying through the air, you are also going to be coming into attack from angles that really no one is expecting. To perform this on controller, it is fairly simple. You're just going to be running, then you're going to slide, you're going to jump into a wall. As you come in contact with the wall, you're going to release your left stick so you are not redirecting your character anywhere. Then you're going to hit jump as you come in contact with that wall, and then as you're jumping off the wall, you are going to redirect your left stick so you can't move again. The biggest thing though, if you are having a hard time with wall jumping, is going to be that left stick. You need to take it off as you are jumping into the wall so you are not moving your character at all, and then you can get a clean jump off that wall. On mouse and keyboard, you're pretty much going to be doing the same thing. You're going to run at a wall, you're going to slide jump into the wall, and then you're going to jump off of that wall. But as you are coming in contact with the wall on mouse and keyboard, I find that I need to hold down on my S key as I'm coming in contact with that wall so I can jump backwards, and it does move you much faster, I find, than a controller. Mouse and keyboard players really do have a lot more advanced movement over a controller player. I recommend that you're practicing wall jumping on your rotation so you can be continually getting practice down. You don't always have to do this in the firing range, but if you're doing this while you're just rotating around the map and there's no stress environments around, you'll definitely be getting the hang of it. And this is what I did to learn wall jumping. It's definitely great to do, and if you're not wall jumping, I think you should. It's a lot of fun, and it is one of my favorite movement techniques in the game. Our second to last movement technique is going to be bunny hopping. Bunny hopping has seen its fair share of nerfs over the seasons, but it is still very effective at evading damage and just trying to get yourself around corners without taking any damage. It is much easier to do on mouse and key in my opinion, but it is still doable on a controller with the right settings, which is why we went over the settings earlier. This is going to be basically the art of hopping around like a bunny to make yourself much harder to hit. It's great to do this to get away or pop a heel and get into cover. It gives you a little bit extra movement and maneuverability to be really elusive. Bunny hopping is fairly hard to achieve and do it effectively, but you can practice this in various ways. First off, for controller players, it is almost a necessity to be using hold for crouch, not toggle, and then to also have paddles or at least the bumper, jumper, and right stick combo that we were talking about earlier. To achieve a bunny hop, you'll simply need to hold crouch and then tap jump as you're coming in contact with the ground. The game thinks you're keeping your movement speed up because you are sliding as you are coming in contact with the ground, but you are also jumping at the same time. So it kind of has this like bunny hop effect where you're actually sliding and jumping and you're going around corners and you can go back and forth and really get a nice movement speed boost while also being very hard to hit. To get the basics down, I definitely just recommend that you try this in a straight line. So slide, and then as you are sliding, you jump, and then as you are coming back in contact with the ground, you're holding crouch the entire time, and you are going to just jump in a straight line. Keep tapping jump. Don't spam jump. If you're spamming it, it's not going to work. And also, you will slow down if you're just going in a straight line. So in order to not slow down like the straight line method, you will need to add in some left and right movement to keep your speed up. Otherwise, the bunny hop will come to a stop. To do this, you're basically going to have to hold your left stick to the 10 or 2 o'clock positions, depending on if you want to go left or right. Your right stick will also need to mimic the movement of your left stick, but not quite as drastically. You'll need to be gradually moving your right stick so that you aren't literally going in circles or just making yourself come to a stop. I would definitely practice bunny hopping by using either Octane or Horizon. For starters, Octane, while he is stimmed, has much better movement, which makes it much easier to do bunny hops. And Horizon, I find, is very easy to just get the overall movement down because Horizon has increased air strafing and air maneuverability, which means Horizon can actually take left and right turns at much greater drastic speeds than any of the other legends in the game, which again makes it much easier to do bunny hopping on Horizon. The 4K and 20 kill badges in Apex are some of the most highly desired badges and milestones that not everyone's going to be able to get. But if you are watching this video, then you are already a step above everyone else, and with a little work and some smart gameplay, we are going to get you right there. In order to get the easier 4K damage badge, there's really a few things that a lot of players can implement to give themselves that extra boost to turn a 2500 or 3000 damage game into a 4000 damage game. It is worth mentioning that if you are a player struggling to get, say, 2000 damage in a game or really anything lower, you probably are going to have a tough time getting a 4K, as your skill level just is not quite there yet. Doesn't mean it isn't possible, but it's all about having perspective and having realistic goals. Start with a solid goal of, say, 2500 damage and then work your way up as desired. Before you know it, 2500 could be the norm. As far as what the 4K badge means, it is not much of an achievement when it compares to something like a 20 bomb, just because you can more artificially create a scenario where dropping 4000 damage a game is possible, where a 20 bomb, this is really not the case. Doesn't mean it isn't a great achievement, just means it's not really as highly regarded when it comes to an upper tier player. There's really two ways to get a 4K, and it's either playing passively or aggressively. You probably have watched your favorite streamer or content creator get those 4K damage games playing aggressively, and it's pretty self-explanatory. This basically just involves pushing everyone with your favorite loadout and more or less just playing the game. This is going to require a ton of skill to do so, and if you are watching the video, you probably aren't going to fall into this category, at least not yet. This is where you should be striving to be though, and with a lot of hard work and time, you will get to this spot. The second playstyle of being more passive is really what you are going to want to do and utilize. This has a ton of advantages when it comes to farming damage games. For starters, you more times than not will just live longer. Living longer is good. This means more chances to poke enemies, and ideally ranged weapons will be what you want to grab, so you can't just poke without really having to ever commit to anything or invite a third party. This, however, does not mean completely playing scared. You still have to be shooting literally everything you see, as every little damage does count. Having the thought of needing to shoot everything, even if they are mega far away, is the thought you need to have when you are farming a damage game. We briefly mentioned weapons, but weaponry is actually very important when it does come into farming damage, even more so than the 20 bomb badge. Specific recommendations and favorites of mine are going to be the longbow, 30-30 repeater, bow check, and the charge rifle. These are just a few great weapons, but really any longer range or mid-range gun is going to be optimal. My specific favorites are the longbow and 30-30, as they can be a little bit more versatile and even work in the closer ranges if you are in a pinch. The big thing with these guns is that you can easily throw a 3x or a 2 to 4x scope on it, and you're going to be pretty versatile when it comes to just shooting whoever you do see. You can, of course, go the aggressive way and just grab a car with a flat line and spray enemies down and push everyone. This, however, is not going to be the easiest way to achieve it for most players. I do think weaponry matters more than legends, but there's a few legends you can pick if you want a 4K badge for any legend. For starters, any legend with movement will just help you get to the fights quicker, and this does mean more damage. Legends like Watson or Bloodhound or Lifeline, to name a few, really aren't the greatest to farm 4Ks just because they do not have any raw natural movement. Maybe Bloodhound in their ultimate, but overall not as great as someone like Valkyrie. Valkyrie is probably one of the easiest legends to farm a 4K with due to her ultimate and passive abilities. The ultimate will allow you to fly around, which means getting from battle to battle quicker, but the big strategy with her, I find, is to find enemies by scanning them and either land off to the side, on high ground, or at a building and really just poke them for damage rather than committing to a fight. Loba does not have a lot of movement, but her ability to post up and loot tons of ammo from around her is quite nice. Her bracelet is a nice perk to again get a little bit of height if needed. Fuse, I can say, is a sleeper legend when it does come to farming damage. A knuckle cluster that can do up to about 100 damage every 20 seconds is a pretty wild ability, and it is very underrated. Definitely don't sleep on Fuse when it comes to raw damage output. Rampart is also great. Her Nth walls increase damage output by 20%, which means a 3200 to 3300 damage game plays out more like a 4000 damage game. This can make a massive difference. Of course, any legend really works, as you want to get a 4K on the legend you want to play, but drop a comment down below and let me know which legend you are trying to get your 4K on. Ranked or pubs is actually a really great question that I think a lot of players need to ask themselves when it does come to farming damage, especially if you are playing in the new ranked system. But first, hit that like button. I really appreciate the support. Ranked is harder technically, but ranked games are much slower, which generally means a lot more poking opportunities at the price of enemy skill. Pubs, however, are faster games, but at the price of a shorter match, and sometimes just finding enough enemies to fight is going to be difficult in a pub game. I think if you are a newer newer player or you haven't played ranked in a while, I would hop in there. Otherwise, I would say anyone platinum or higher, it might be better off doing pubs. Another pretty small tip, but also a tip that can massively change things for you, is to finish your knocked enemies. Finishing knocked enemies adds an additional 100 damage to your counter, and even if you are finishing enemies that are not even your kills from afar, this can quickly add up to a free 500 to 1,000 damage every match. You could even risk it and go one step farther and allow enemies to revive players to farm them more or less twice. It's a little risky, but it is another viable tactic. A huge mistake players can make when you are going for that 20 bomb though is playing with randoms. If you want to forego the torture of playing with randoms, or if you're just looking to chat with others, hop into the community Discord. We would love to have you. One of the toughest badges to acquire in Apex is going to be that coveted 20 kill badge. For a lot, it's really a milestone in an Apex Legend player's career, and it's almost like a way to just validate and show your skill to others. The biggest difference between the 20 kill and the 4K damage badges, it's going to be that getting that 20 kill badge just requires you to be a better player, whereas the damage farming badges are a little bit easier to acquire for any player of any skill level. Unlike the 4K badge, passive play styles will not work. The slower you are overall in finishing fights, taking fights, looting, and overall rotations just means less of a chance you are going to have to get that one extra fight in that really matters an immense amount. Getting the 20 bomb badge almost means you need to play so aggressively that you are just not overly thinking about the most tactically way to approach a fight, and really you are just going in and using your raw gun skill to make up the difference or lack of thoughtfulness. Almost no regard for one's safety needs to be done, and really you gotta push everyone as fast as you can and as often as you can. For weaponry, I think this does matter less than the 4K badge, but you will absolutely want to use mid to close range. Sniper and marksman weapons can have some use, but overall you're gonna have a harder time pulling off a 20 bomb with these guns. I think the flatlining car combo, or even just a car with a peacekeeper, are incredible combos, as there's a pretty good amount of them on the ground, and heavy ammo is the most common ammo type this season. This means a more streamlined experience with less time needing to hunt down that ammo because it is going to be in people's death boxes. Also, these combos are very good at just being very aggressive and pushing everyone. The Havoc also deserves a mention, as its level 3 mag size of 36 rounds works incredibly well as a close-up to mid-range hybrid weapon that really is one of the best guns in the game because it has one of the best time to kills in the game. Other notable mentions are, of course, the Spitfire LMG, the big gun, the one where you just pull the trigger and everyone falls over, and you will have the R301 if you do land on a crafter, but I do find spending any time to craft a weapon really not to be worth it, so take care if you do this. You would hate to miss out because you did sit on the crafter and craft. Arguably, the best legend for a 20 bomb is going to again be Valkyrie. The movement is too top-notch not to recommend. Rotating from squad to squad cannot be undervalued, and she will be my definitive #1 pick for a high kill game. Beyond this, really any legend works, but any legend who excels in fights and quick rapid kills will be helpful. Legends like Pathfinder or Horizon are great because their ability to quickly take and finish a fight and make something really out of nothing when it comes to positioning and overall in-fight utility. You might also want to look at Loba. Getting a kill or a wipe and then looting quickly with the black market can be a really great way to rapidly get loot without needing to walk around and poking your head in each individual death box. Again, it's just going to speed things up. No doubt about it, when it comes to ranked or pubs, you'll want to stick with pubs for a 20 bomb unless you are some sort of freak gaming warlord, which in case, why are you even watching this video? I'm kind of like a broken record at this point, but the biggest thing that comes into being a factor when you are going for that 20 bomb is gonna just be luck. You really don't have any control over how fast the lobby dies, and because of this, the majority of your games will not even be capable of reaching 20 kills because the lobby is dying very fast. The best thing you can do is to identify and understand when you actually might have a 20 kill game on your hands. Generally, this will be very early on. You might get something like 4 to 5 kills in the first couple minutes of a match, and there are still like 40 to 45 people left. This for me almost always triggers the fact that I will have something special and I need to play a little bit more aggressively than I normally would like. Likewise, if I can't get anywhere from 7 to 10 kills in the first half of the lobby being killed, I am also feeling pretty great knowing that I have 10 kills with 25 to 35 players left. Using these triggers or milestones mid-game is really a good way to just understand how you need to play so you can adapt accordingly if you do need to be a little bit more aggressive. I will say that even if you aren't capable of getting the 20 bomb during a game because it does slip away from you, or maybe you are not quite there yet in skill, I think playing like you are going to get one is important, as you're going to be in the mode of better practice with with those rushes and that aggressive gameplay to be more accustomed to what it's going to feel like when you are actually close to getting a 20 kill game. It should go without saying, but hot drops are basically a must. Landing with 2 or more teams means more randomness and 50-50ing off spawn, which is going to mean more dying, but it also means having more potential kills without really needing to move around, which is much welcomed when you are going for a 20 kill game. Again, you're going to find a quick death more times than not, but this is going to be the play style if you do really want to get that 20 bomb. This also means understanding one of Apex Legends' basics of dropping and flying down to the ground is critical. Try landing on floor loot for the best chance of survival off spawn, and don't roll the dice with opening a loot pill while you pray to get that gun and another player just walks over that R99 and one mags you in the back. Looting in general is a pretty big thing to understand, and I would say looting is going to be the make it or break it factor for a lot of players that are missing out on a 20 bomb. You need, and I say need, to spend the most minimal time looting unless you need ammo or you are literally out of shields. No more than a few seconds. I would say 5 max should be spent after a fight getting equipment. Hop into a death box, pick up the necessities, and move on. Playing this way gets you in the mode of killing and rotating rather than spending excess amounts of time looting. And honestly, if you're playing pubs, I think this is really the way you should always be playing pubs. You really want to be getting as much action as possible so you can get better at the game. One thing that I think is also often underlooked or undervalued is that your teammates need to be pretty bad. Shouldn't be a problem, right? Anytime your teammates get a kill means one less for you, which in turn is going to matter a lot in the duration of a game. Getting poor teammates, or even better yet, playing solo queue is the way to go. It's not going to be easy, but in general, it's needed if you want to get the 20 kill badge. Another option is, of course, grab some friends and have them feed this to you, but I find that this isn't really great, and if anything, it's going to give you a false sense of accomplishment if you are able to get fed that 20 kill badge. If you truly want to get the badge, though, you should check out this 101 tip video to excel and master your game. And as always, happy gaming, legends.